Welcome back to the Joy News channel. This is where to stay for all the updates on the E-Levy. Remember, it's been back and forth with government and the minority in Parliament. Today, it's being looked at the floor of the House. It's actually at the consideration stage. Now, a number of issues have come up. The minority have staged a walkout, probably because they do not have the numbers if it gets to voting. We've also heard that the majority have marshaled all its members into the House, even though we know one of them is out of the country. But we also know that the Speaker himself did not know that this was coming. So he's been complaining that this came to him as a surprise. Be it as it may, the House is currently considering the bill, and after the consideration stage, there's supposed to be the third reading. The question now is, will that happen today? Per the standing orders of the House, it must happen 24 hours after consideration. Now, the question also is this being considered under certificate of urgency? If not, can it be passed today? All these are technicalities that we're seeking answers to. Earlier, my colleague Parker Wilson said that the minority is preparing to address the press. We'll be getting more from that area because they will be addressing some of the technicalities for us. The questions that are bothering our minds, we'll try and get answers to when that press conference comes in. We'll also try and get the majority side to explain to us what exactly is happening, whether it's on a certificate of urgency or whether it's just the normal activities of the House. Then we know whether there's a breach of the standing orders or not. There's also the bit about the Supreme Court's decision that says that you need a voting quorum to be able to do even a voice quorum. Did that happen before the Speaker put the question? For those of you who the ayes and the noes, he put that question when the minority had staged a walkout. You could hear the majority leader, Seche Mensah-Bonsu, calling the attention of the Speaker to put the question whilst the minority were still in the House, even though they were up on their feet and trying to walk out of the chamber. He was calling the attention of the Speaker to actually put that question. Probably he had the Supreme Court's judgment in mind. Now, let's go back to the chamber because the bill is still under consideration.
Those in favor of the proposed amendment, those in favor that the long title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The long title is accordingly ordered to stand part of the bill.
Speaker.
Yes, please.
I believe we can, because of what you've done, we can have you can issue some consequential directive to the table officers and the draft persons to help us clean what you have done up. And I guess we'll be home and dry with that.
We're live in Parliament in the chamber of the House, and the controversial E-Levy is being considered by only the majority side. I mean, before that happened and before the minority walked out of the chamber, a number of people made their points or submissions on the floor. Kesela Tufo-Singh, who is spokesperson for the minority on finance, actually said that the finance minister got it all wrong with the E-Levy and must consider not taxing Momo transactions. He said instead of targeting the upstream people, he is now targeting the poor people. He also described the tax as not an economic tax, but rather a digital pocket tax. And he says, if I decide to put my money into my e-wallet, then government is coming to pickpocket me. That's exactly the explanation he gave. And he also linked or said the e-levy, because the government says it will resolve all our issues, the e-levy can be equivalent to ACOBAM, the famous ACOBAM. And he also indicated that that could also be a solution to his colleague Ablakwa's bald head. Now, the Deputy Finance Minister, Abena Sari, appealed to members at the other side, saying that this is a homegrown solution to all the economic challenges. In fact, most of the challenges we're facing, she said, is a homegrown solution that they must all favorably or must be in favor of. So she appealed to the other side to accept and approve the budget. Adongo also came in, who is a member of the Finance Committee, and he said that government must think outside the box and look for other alternatives, because he feels that taxing Momo would actually burden the already burdened Ghanaian. He described the e-levy as a retrogression of government's digitization efforts. Information Minister Kojo Ponkroma then comes in to suggest that the e-levy will not kill the Momo industry as people purport, because he makes an example of the communication tax, which he says people were saying will kill the communication industry, but in the end, it has actually boosted that sector. Haruna Idrisu, who is minority leader, comes in to talk about, and even before he came in, Jenapo had some advice for the finance minister, saying that managing the economy is not quoting the Bible and wearing white costumes or attire. It must be followed by action. But Haruna crowns it all by saying that the tax defeats the purpose of government's own digital economy. He draws reference from some taxes that were introduced by the NDC that the NPP government described as nuisance taxes. So he says that the e-levy is the nuisance of all nuisance taxes. Now, he talks about businesses that are suffocating, and he says the e-levy will further burden their plight. He talks about the fact that the minority doesn't want to be part of this whole e-levy process. So he wanted it to be captured by the House, the hazard of the House, the hazard that the minority is staying away from the passage of the e-levy. So they finally walked out of the House, and as they were walking out, you could hear the majority leader, Seche Mensah-Bonsu, asking the speaker to put the question. And that has been an issue that has been raised earlier, that the Supreme Court has made a ruling on this whole matter, that there must be a voice quorum before that happens. Did that happen today? Is the whole thing happening under certificate of urgency? Will it even pass today? Now, we're told by Parker, who is our man in Parliament, that the minority will be holding a press conference to also state that side of the story. We know that probably the minority do not have the numbers, so they chose to walk out as one of the strategies, because we know Jachi Kwesen is not in the House. Now, we also know that the chieftaincy minister is not around. We've heard that there's an ambulance stationed in Parliament, so that if it got to a vote count, then he could have been brought in. But we also know that Adjoa Safo is out of the country, so she wouldn't have been part of the people. So that leaves both sides with 137 and 136 for the NDC. So probably that's why they took that decision. But we'll wait that press conference by the minority to tell us why they staged the walkout. Then we can also get some clarity on that matter of whether it was under certificate of urgency or not. We can go back to Parliament, the floor of the House, where the bill is currently being considered under consideration stage.
And I'll proceed to to adjourn the House, unless otherwise guided by the House. In the absence of that, I proceed to adjourn the House. And yes, majority leader.
Speaker, it has to do with the programs of tomorrow. The presentation.
So we can hear that Parliament has just adjourned. We don't know whether that bill has been passed or not. Let's go back to Parker, who is our man in Parliament. He's been monitoring this for us. Parker, what exactly has happened with the bill? Okay, so we'll try and get Parker to be back on the line to tell us what has happened. Evans is still here. He's head of political desk here at Joy News. It does look like the bill was not passed today.
Well, the Speaker was just saying that he would have to adjourn the House. What we don't know is whether he's adjourning this until further notice today or he's adjourning to tomorrow. And we'll get Parker to clarify for us very shortly. But as I indicated before, they were doing consideration. They had to do a third reading.
Yeah.
The third reading procedure says they have to wait 24 hours.
Yes, after the consideration.
If that is what the Speaker was doing, then that's according to procedure. That then will clarify the situation that this is not a certificate of urgency. But we'll wait for Parker to join us and clarify that for us, what this adjournment is. But whatever it is, the E-Levy hasn't been passed. And at best, what we knew they were doing before was a consideration stage where they were going through some of the amendments.
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet they've done the third reading, and Parker needs to clarify that for us, whether they did the third reading today. But they can't do the third reading if you're going to proceed, unless it's an urgent bill or it is an certificate of urgency. So that still is some clarity, but we need to clarify what that adjournment was for. But the minority side, we are waiting to hear. I'm sure Parker has said they will be addressing the press conference.
Yeah.
They appear to hold a bit more cards to play as far as this is concerned, even while they're not in the House. Empowered by the Supreme Court judgment and also empowered by procedure. I mean, because as I've been saying all along, if you follow how this E-Levy thing had gone, that certificate of urgency question has still not been resolved, unless you continue for where you left off, where the House was voting on it. I don't see how you can continue without concluding that process. I mean, I don't see how that works out. And so that's one of the cards they hold. Secondly, they can go back to the Supreme Court if this is passed and say they've done a series of voting. In fact, as it is now, they've done voice votes on the second reading. They've done voice votes on doing a consideration stage on a number of items. All those voice votes are subject to a challenge of the Supreme Court because of the non-voting quorum the Supreme Court talked about very clearly that decisions cannot be taken in the House by a minority to bind the majority of members of the House. And so the very, very interesting I guess, scenarios still yet to play out in the coming days on the back of what we've seen today.
Let's go back to Parker. Is Parker on? Parker must tell us what exactly has happened in the House before the adjournment. Parker? Hello, Parker?
Hello, Aisha, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Parker, go ahead.
Right, so Aisha, I mean, the Parliament is just about to adjourn proceedings for today and, of course, make way for the State of the Nation address tomorrow. They want the MPs to get themselves ready for that. The minority is just about to address the press conference. But I must say, just a while ago, the controversial E-Levy was approved. And it's been directed that the President should have sent his signature to, of course, the bill. And so now it's in force. Going forward, Ghanaians and, of course, every individual in this country should get ready for what the minority call Momo tax, even though the majority has indicated that it is not double taxation. So Frank Anodompre is here, and he will be addressing the press very, very soon.
The conference room, 7th floor conference room. That's where we are holding the press conference.
Okay, right. So the venue has changed. They are moving to the 7th floor. We are moving with them so that we're going to carry the live press conference by the majority leadership. But I must say that the E-Levy has been approved. It's on record. Parliament, a one-sided majority house, has approved the controversial E-Levy.
You heard Parker Wilson, who is our man in Parliament, just confirming that the E-Levy has been approved. I mean, you saw how it all started. It went through first, second reading. It went through consideration stage, now third reading, and now we're having confirmation that it's been approved. Do you know how it all played out in the House? Minority had to stay out of the whole procedure, saying that they do not want to be part of this. I mean, Evans, before we went to Parker, we're all not sure whether it's been passed, but there's confirmation right now. It's been passed.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so they've approved it, and definitely they were working under the Secret of Agents. I don't know, they couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And as I've been saying all along, that in itself, if that's what's happened, it's
raises questions.
Subject to a lot of questions, and the minority, I'm sure, will have their say on that particular procedure. And then obviously the big one is the Supreme Court's, the constitutional challenges that this throws up. And so we wait to see. I'm very, very certain we've not heard the last of this as far as if indeed has been approved and Parker confirms it has been and the E-Levy is now law. No, not law yet, because the president will have to assent. And I bet you the president is speaking tomorrow. He will assent it today and make it a big deal in his speech tomorrow, obviously. So we expect that to happen tomorrow. But I mean, I think we should just be clear about this, that yes, the bill has been passed, but several parts of the procedure constitutionally are subject to just a myriad of challenges going forward. And wait to see, very, very interesting days ahead as far as the E-Levy is concerned. It's by no stretch of the imagination out of the woods. The E-Levy. No stretch of the imagination out of the woods. I mean, they still have a constitutional hurdle to cross and procedural hurdle to cross in Parliament. The reason why, many will question, but the Speaker is an NDC Speaker. And he was presiding. If any of the things I have suggested is what it is, why didn't the Speaker, intervene and stop the process? The Speaker cannot do that. The Speaker is the Speaker. He can't be an activist Speaker. He can't be a member of Parliament.
Somebody must bring it to his notice.
Absolutely, somebody must. And with nobody bringing an objection, he will proceed as if everything is okay. But there are processes in Parliament subsequent to decisions have been taken. To raise it again for reconsideration. And going forward, it'll be interesting to see whether the minority guys exercise that right they have under the standing orders and the Constitution to do so.
But again, as to whether they will go back to Supreme Court is another question.
As in the minority?
The minority itself has shown doesn't have any trust anymore in the Supreme Court. I mean, when the Supreme Court gave the decision on this quorum in Parliament, saying that the First Deputy Speaker or any other Speaker can actually vote when it gets to that point, they have expressed their displeasure over that ruling. So whether they will still go back to the Supreme Court for interpretation, that's something that we'll be looking for to see how it happened. But you've just also heard the majority chief whip, Anodompre, says that there's a press conference to be addressed. But this is quite interesting that if the Speaker says he was taken by surprise, then this looks like a calculated move.
Of course it is
calculated. To actually get this passed before. Maybe that's the reason why there's been a delay in the State of the Nation.
And it shows, of course, that's what has been the delay. The President was waiting for the E-Levy to be passed, was waiting for this retreat that talked about the economy and puts in the measures, waiting for all this.
Because they're all things that will play out in
the pieces to come together. And then tomorrow he'll come and talk. State of the Nation. Yes, we are in crisis. Second, I've put in place measures to address it.
These are
Third, I have the E-Levy passed. We are on our way to recovery. That is the narrative that the President had been waiting for. And there's a reason why they adjourned his State of the Nation address. Political masterstroke it is. Strategy-wise, perfect. The E-Levy, the way the majority side had executed this plan, is spot on. Of course, until the challenges, as I anticipate, will come. We'll see how that holds up too. That is good. the outcomes of these challenges that I'm anticipating is also not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
As far as strategy goes, you see this is one of those moments where the political chicanery comes to play.
Yeah.
So you have a majority that springs a surprise not only on the minority side but on the speaker.
But the speaker.
Right? The speaker admits that he's surprised by the moves that has happened. But the majority guy had this plan for a while. They knew and cooking this for a while. Just last week, I was speaking to another on prayer about the E-Levy. And I asked him, you still don't have the numbers. He said, we will pass it.
Okay.
Because
they even gave timelines.
Exactly. And I said to him, you don't have you don't have the chieftaincy minister. He says, well, we'll do without both of them. Okay. As we saw today, the suggestion is that they've done it. Now, the lead up today, they chose their day very carefully. One, you have the Black Stars playing, and don't underestimate that. Ghanaians today, as we all woke up, the only thing we're focused on was the Black Stars.
The Black Stars.
The reason why you're wearing your jersey.
Yes, definitely.
Right. That's the only thing Ghanaians were focused on. Ghanaians, as we've seen, are opposed to the E-Levy. You really want to pass the E-Levy under circumstances where there's no fuss, there's no attention.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't create the buzz, the negativity that we know the E-Levy brings. You choose a day the Black Stars are playing the game. Perfect day.
Yeah.
All focus, complete distraction.
Yeah.
We have been distracted, our attention focused on Black Stars, and then you stick it into Parliament. Even the minority guys didn't wake up this morning thinking this was going to happen.
This was going to happen.
They were looking forward to watching the game at 5 p.m., right? The speaker was saying. So that is smart. Secondly, you choose a day when the Tamale interchange, which is situated across constituencies where the NDC has MPs. The Tamale area is not a place that is held by any MPP guy.
Yeah.
It's held by NDC, including the minority leader himself.
Yes.
Right? You choose a day like that when their constituents will be looking to see the thing commissioned so they can use and invite them to it. Another distraction. And we also been told 7 of them were on their way. Some of them were at the airport when they were called that return. It's very possible some of them may have actually flown already to Tamale.
Yeah, but some couldn't make it.
So again, another sweet plan. This is what politics is about. You need to play your game and you need to catch your opponent when they are less aware, when they least expect, which is exactly what has happened today. They've passed the E-Levy with a one-sided house that may possibly not meet the constitutional bar that the Supreme Court just set of 138.5 people in the House, but they have passed it.
Yeah.
In the interim, the president will sign it, and as we know, the GRA has already put in place measures to implement the E-Levy the minute the president assents.
Oh, definitely.
So it may well be that from the 1st of April, which is this Friday, the E-Levy will be kick in.
Yeah.
And we'll start paying for it. And I anticipate, I'll be surprised if it didn't happen. There will be several challenges to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
There will be several challenges on the floor of Parliament. How the government navigates this process going forward, I'm pretty sure they anticipate that there will be challenges.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the Attorney General's Department had already looked at the scenarios and thought how we're going to deal with this when it comes to. I'm very, very sure. The way they played it today, this had been cooking for so long.
Yeah.
And I'll be surprised they didn't think about, so what do we do after we pass the E-Levy and their challenges to it?
If they didn't, I'll be surprised myself, because if you're able to actually surprise your opponents this way, you should as well foresee what will happen after all of this has happened. So yes, I want to buy into that idea that it's well cooked, that by April 1st or so, this E-Levy will kick in and we'll start seeing the effect of Momo taxing. We're going back to Parliament right now because the majority is going to address the press, so we'll get to know more. I mean, we've been speculating. There's been issues that we've been looking forward to getting answers to. We're looking at a lot of challenges that will come up after this decision has been taken. When we listen to the majority side, the minority is also preparing to come out with their side. Then we can understand exactly what has happened. But the confirmation is that E-Levy has been passed. Tomorrow, I'm sure the president will talk more about this. Come April 1st, it is something that we're expecting that all of us will be paying the Momo tax. Are you ready for it, Evans?
I mean, as for the Momo tax, it's one of those things. I mean, you wait to see its impact. I mean, the thing about this tax is it's a tax that you can avoid.
Yes.
Pretty easily.
But I mean, for working people like us, it becomes difficult because, for instance...
Yeah, but it's all... do you want to use Momo?
Yes.
I mean, I still don't have a Momo account. I don't have a Momo account.
See, you have no choice because if you want to do some transaction, you are sitting here working, but there's something that must happen at the same time that you sit here. You can easily send Momo and get it done.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
now you have to move your car, drive to wherever it is, go and give them cash.
No, but here's the thing. I get your point. I get your point 100%. But one of the consequences of this, and it has been said before, people will move from doing cashless to cash. It's just the natural, rational human reaction to paying more for anything.
Which is what's
happening. If I pay my house help with Momo,
I'll
go to cash and give it to her. She's up to her head to go to the bank and drop it in.
Yeah.
If I have a transaction that I used to pay with Momo, now I do that a lot. I would rather go to the ATM and withdraw the cash and give the person. If the person is at a distant place, if the person needs the money, and I say I have the cash, the person will get it. In today's time of dispatch riders,
it would only delay a lot of the things that you do. It would delay because, I mean, by the time you drive from here to wherever it is to hand the cash to the person, that time you could have saved it for something else. You understand? So, yes, a lot of people will go back to cash. They will be using cash instead of doing e-transactions. But that would also take us aback because we've come a long way.
I mean, and that is why
a lot of people to jump onto this digitization.
Really, the passage of the E-Levy itself is a big test.
Yeah.
And the government has a lot riding on the smooth implementation. It is one thing to pass it. It is another thing to implement it smoothly and get what you expect from the E-Levy.
Yeah.
And as I've said, from a tax that is you can actually avoid very easily by simply deciding to deal in cash. The jury is still out on whether this will really fix the holes that the government anticipates it will.
Yeah.
It all comes down to implementation. The consequences of this, many have written about. Experiences elsewhere have taught us what it was. We will see what Ghana's scenario and situation is. The government is hoping that this will bring in a lot of money. And the press conference is about to begin from the majority side. We'll hear a bit more. But we will now begin to see, I think the real work now begins for the government going forward. Apart from the challenges that will come, making sure that this is implemented in a way that is ultimately significantly beneficial to the economy is a key thing. But I've also argued that the passage of the E-Levy is not necessarily only about how much money the economy will make.
Yeah.
There is also the assurance value of it that it gives to the investor community. So the investor community started, agitating and they were not sure about our economy. And they began to punish us when government failed to pass the E-Levy last year.
Yeah.
Because their confidence in government's ability to raise revenue, to manage the economy in a fashion that allows the government to pay up their returns, the interest that, of course, will be accruing, was shaking when government failed to pass the E-Levy. So there's a certain value that the E-Levy brings to government beyond the monetary, 6 billion. and I believe that is even where the real benefit of the E-Levy is. So if you're an investor sitting in the US and you're holding government bonds, and today you wake up and this news should be everywhere. Reuters is going to run it, Bloomberg will run it, government eventually passes, and you pick your electronic device and you see that the government of Ghana, where you're already lending money to, has passed the E-Levy. That gives you an assurance. That gives you a certain confidence that, okay, overall, well, in the end, government is going to pay. That will affect interest rates.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And pay attention to when we were downgraded by the mini ratings agency.
Yeah.
Government's inability to pass this key revenue measure was a factor in it. Now that they passed it, it is one of those missing pieces that will reassure the investor community, that will reassure the ratings agency, and possibly the next round of reviews could give us a certain boost in terms of our rating. So for me, a lot of people have said, oh, 6 billion, that's what we're looking for. I was looking more at that assurance value that the E-Levy brings to the investor community and the confidence value in our economy. It's arguably even bigger than the money you're going to get. And don't forget, it is the roads minister, I believe, who was in Parliament and also confirmed that one of the things they want to do with the E-Levy is to collateralize it for more loans. I mean, he said it.
That has been...
Yeah, I mean, he said it on the floor. That one of the things they've discussed at Cabinet was that you get an E-Levy pass and you collateralize it. So you have a 6 billion that you intend to collect over a year. Once you pass it, you go to the markets and say, I'm expecting 6 billion in 1 year.
Yeah.
Give me 5 billion, whatever. Give me 6 billion now.
In expectation
that I can give you the 6 billion in a year. Happen. So you get the money up front to do your work. That is possibly one of the reasons why they need the E-Levy. So the E-Levy has several benefits to the government, way beyond the 6 billion. So people say, oh, but 6 billion is not enough to do a lot.
Okay.
But if you look at the confidence value that I've explained, the fact that if you're holding a government bond, this will give you confidence that they can pay you your returns when it's due.
Yeah, but it's all based on the smooth implementation
of this. I mean,
so passing is one thing.
But even before the implementation, the mere fact that you pass it alone will give a boost to the market.
Well, but if you use it as collateral and you get that money, and at the end of 1 year you do not get your 6 billion.
Well, that's
also another headache. And then that will come back to the citizenry. Then we will have to pay the loan.
Yeah, of course. And the government had said that this is not the only revenue measure they're looking at. Another measure they're looking at, and they've announced it recently, is to review the exemptions that we grant to some of the investors in Ghana. So that, again, in other words, the E-Levy is just one piece of a puzzle. There are other pieces that need to come into play for this to be overall beneficial. But this is a big win for them today. Today they need to celebrate. I mean, the president will come tomorrow, I expect, and wax lyrical about this.
It's the president's birthday today. Perhaps it's the biggest
of course. I mean, he will come tomorrow and wax lyrical about this. He's commissioned the interchange tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, he will talk about the Sino-Hydro deal still alive. I mean, the commission on the project, cuts off on the project in Kumasi recently. They passed the E-Levy. It is his birthday. Whatever it is, this is a good day. But the real work begins after today. Yeah. All right. And I'm going to be, one of the things that we need to be watching is how the investor community responds to this going forward. It's key because that will give us an indication whether the positive signals that this will send to the international community, the investor community, it will begin to yield fruits in terms of the cost of borrowing for Ghana going forward. So there are really big implications for the E-Levy being passed beyond what you expect to get in a year's time. That is the 6 billion that has been. But again, we talk about 6 billion, but that is when it was 1.75. Now it has been amended formally now to 1.5. So it can't be 6 billion anymore. Yeah. And I'm expecting now to hear from the finance ministry, if it is not 6 billion, and it can be now because it's now no longer 1.75. What is it?
Okay.
What is it going to be?
And how are we going to make up for the loss.
Yeah.
Because if you've targeted 6 billion and that's what you want to use for government business, now you're not getting that. What other alternatives are you using?
To answer that question, I mean, you can guess how they're going to do this. When the E-Levy was first mooted, government had not made all these cuts to spending.
Yeah.
Subsequent to the E-Levy, they've announced a 20 billion CD cut. Subsequent to that, they've announced another 10% cut in discretionary spending. They've frozen importation of new cars, traveling,
tertiary education,
exactly.
University.
So all those cuts, as they told us yesterday, is going to, when the finance minister addressed the press last week, is going to save the economy some 3.5 billion.
Okay.
So 3.5 billion
should be able to
available.
make up for the difference.
And by the way, that's a big if. Because we haven't seen enough evidence to point out where exactly the 3.5 billion savings is coming from. But they're giving us a global picture. They've been the overall picture. I mean, all we know is, for example, the fuel coupon reduction, the 50% cut, is going to save some 62 million, I think they said. But the other measures, we don't know yet how much each is going to save. We want to take our finance minister's word for it. So 3.5 billion. So you're going to save 3.5 billion. You're going to have a shortfall from the E-Levy because it's no longer 1.75, it's 1.5. I mean, you add that to that, you should be fine.
The other challenge this poses, aside all the rosy picture we are painting for the investment, for investor confidence, it's the bit about security. Because there's no doubt a lot of people, especially the informal sector, will go back to carrying cash. You know how carrying a lot of cash has affected us in this country. Even when we were doing the Momo and when we were not having all these charges, we've seen a number of daylight robbery, banks, people go carry a lot of money from banks, policemen have died because of this. So that is one challenge I think government should also be thinking about. You and I should be thinking about the security, the police, all of them should be worried about.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. I mean, as we see today, the point you've made about how this has turned out today, we also know, Aisha, that today the minority guys have, if you've just join us and wonder what has happened. You see on the screen, it's big news today. E-Levy has been passed into law. The president can't wait to assent to it. I'm pretty sure in the next few minutes he will assent to it. But then we have a situation where the minority side had said to us that they were not in the know when it came to the subject of E-Levy coming to the floor today. But as we know, the minority side had put forward names for the debate. Now, so the question is, if they didn't know the debate was coming, how did they put forward their names prior to the debate? One of the possibility is that the E-Levy we knew from the past was always going to come for debate. And so that could be possibly something that they had decided way before today in caucus with the leadership. It could also well mean that somehow they had been hinted about this, but we'll get a lot of clarity. The bottom line is, E-Levy has been passed, but there are so many questions still left unanswered. So many of them. And if you're just joining us, a few of them that we need to answer. The two big ones are, one, that there was a voice vote for the passage of the E-Levy. The first question to ask is, did they have a voting quorum for that decision? And a voting quorum is a term introduced by the Supreme Court. Two terms they introduced, non-voting quorum and a voting quorum. The question is, did they have a voting quorum? A voting quorum, according to the Supreme Court, and the Constitution, is half. Half of all members of Parliament is 138.5. Did they have that number? That's the first question to answer that they need to be addressing. And they address a press conference. If you're watching us on the journey, there's a press conference that's about to be addressed by the majority side. I'm expecting that question will be asked. Second is, this was considered under a certificate of urgency. It's the only reason why the entire process went along within a few minutes, really, in the absence of the minority side who boycotted the House. If they did so, procedurally, how did they come to address it as a certificate of urgency? Because yes, at the committee level, they recommended its consideration as a certificate of urgency. Indeed, they voted at committee level, and the minority side won by a single vote, right? Because the chairman intervened with his a tie-splitting vote, and he won. But that committee report is subject to parliamentary consideration. And the parliament was in the process of voting on that when it was truncated. And so they still need to explain how they continue on from there in this particular sitting. That needs to be cleared up for us. That's another question, of course. Then there are questions about how they managed to spring a surprise on the Speaker of Parliament, who himself confessed that it was a surprise. How they spring a surprise on the minority side when this was not planned. The minority had said. Regardless of all the questions, today the E-Levy has been passed. We'll get clarity soon whether the president has assented to it. The president was in the northern region. It's easy to fly back now and go straight to his office and assent to it. I won't be surprised with the next few minutes. We'll see a picture circulating of the president with his pen, signing the E-Levy into law.
Yes, I won't be surprised either. But of course, you can say it's the biggest present to the president. Today is his birthday. And on the floor of the House, whilst they were debating, you heard Adongo say that it's really a bad birthday present he has given to Ghanaians. But of course, I think he must be happy today, being his birthday, and also preparing for tomorrow's State of the Nation's address. He must be very, very happy, and I won't be surprised, just like you stated that. I mean, there will be a picture circulating showing him with his fine pen trying to assent that bill to become law so that people can be taxed on Momo transactions. But if you're just joining us, there were a lot of submissions made by both sides, especially from the minority side before this bill was passed, even before the minority staged a walkout. But significantly, if you listen to the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, who leads all the minority caucus in Parliament, he said that the minority doesn't want to be part of this whole E-Levy thing. He said that the E-Levy must not be passed at all. And he said it is a retrogression of government's efforts to digitize the economy. Indeed, many experts have also said same, that if we do not want to go back to the carrying a lot of cash, then this E-Levy is going to erode all the efforts we've made. In fact, government has also explained that it will not happen that way. If you listen to Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah, he explained that, look, this will not kill the Momo industry. And he made reference to the communication tax. He said when it was going to be passed, people made similar comments, but for him, it has rather boosted that industry, the communication industry. So he sees same for the Momo industry. Deputy Finance Minister Abena Osei, who also appealed to the minority side, said that this is a homegrown solution, and she expects that both sides of the divide will actually approve so government can go ahead with business of the country so that our economy can be revived. She talked about the declining economy, which government accepts, but she says this is one of the key measures that will address some of the challenges we are facing with the economy. The minority, before he staged that walkout, gave an advice to the finance minister. If you heard, that advice came from John Jinapo, who is a member of the Mines and Energy Committee, who is also an MP for Kosogo. Yape Kosogo. He said that managing the economy is not quoting Bible verses and wearing white, but he said that must be backed with action. That was the advice he gave to the finance minister. He first of all said that this whole e-levy thing, the finance minister has failed with this whole e-levy thing, and that he said there are other alternatives that government could look at to actually raise revenue. Now, the spokesperson for the minority on finance, Dr. Ato Kesalato Hayford, he said that government is actually describing this e-levy as a panacea to all the problems we're having in this country. So for him, he actually suspects that the e-levy can actually cure the his colleague's bald head. He mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the debate today was one of those things. Very interesting debate. It didn't last long though, because the house was adjourned for 30 minutes, and then when they came back, there was a boycott. But in terms of the numbers, I had mentioned that half of the house will be 138.5. It's actually 137.5, and that, so you run that up to 138. So that's 138 is what they need.
Yes.
To have a voting quorum.
Yeah.
So 138, not 138.5. So 138 is what they need.
Yes.
And I repeat, that would be a very interesting subject for some subsequent, debate and controversy going forward. And we need some clarity on that. I expect that question to be asked, whether, according to the Supreme Court, they had 138 people in the House to take the vote.
Yeah.
And the point that I made about the minority guys submitting their list of debaters when the e-levy finally came to the floor, and as I indicated, two options were possible why that is. Either they were told recently and given a hint that the debate was coming, and so they submitted their names, or their names have already been there because the e-levy was scheduled, to be taken sometime in the future. And from the clarity I'm getting, their names were submitted way before today, as part of the entire process of considering the e-levy. That is, anytime the e-levy will come to the floor, these are our people.
Yeah.
We are going to be putting up to debate. And so that is the only reason why the minority, had names already planned to debate it. Yeah. Because, of course. Yeah. Because when the e-levy first came to the floor, last year, and the violence happened. The violence happened on the question of whether they should take it on a certificate of urgency. The bill itself had not come for debate. Yeah. So it was in those conversations that the minority guys had put up their names, that when it came for debate, these are our people. Yeah. Of course, it came for a debate today, and so they just followed that procedure. That's the clarity I'm getting. Yeah. And as you see now, they are not Dompre and Chairman Sabongsu,
majority leader,
and Afenyo Marking, deputy, are all getting seated for this press conference. I mean, there's so many questions that we need clarity to. I'm sure
I pray that those questions come up so that we can get clarity on that matter.